Hey, it's Jorge from brewbeerandDrinkit.com. Today, what I'm going to be doing is brewing a Hellesbock, or also known as a Maibock. So it's January. It's going to have about 4 months to kind of condition it, and it will be ready hopefully late April, early May. So that's kind of the tradition of this beer, and that's the reason why I'm brewing it today. Now today, I'm not really going to be experimenting. At first, I thought about continuing my brewing with oxidized hop experiment. I actually just bottled, or actually I should say, I kegged the Munich Helles, or I should say, I think it was a German Pilsner. I don't know, whatever beer I brewed last time where I was brewing with oxidized hops. And I did a little bit of a tasting while it was flat, and it was good, but I actually want to wait until it's the product is completely done. So right now it's carbonating, and I want to wait to until I do an actual beer tasting before I use aged hops again, because I actually have a couple ounces of Czech Saaz hops aging right now, and I was going to use it for this beer to kind of continue the experiment, but I actually want to get a little bit of feedback to see if I'm going to be using more hops, less hops, because that's kind of what I need to find out. If you're going to be using the same amount of hops when you're trying to bitter up a beer using beta acids as opposed to alpha acids. So for this batch, I actually just went out to the homebrew supply store and got fresh hops. So these aren't oxidized. I'll be brewing with regular Czech Saaz hops. Now the recipe actually very simple. This wouldn't exactly be my final recipe for this beer, and if there's something that I do want to kind of test or find out with the style is exactly how much Vienna malt would you use on a Maibock and a Hellesbock, because I've had a lot of different samples, a lot of commercial samples of Maibocks or Hellesbocks, and sometimes I feel like the maltiness is overdone a little bit, and I'm not sure if this beer is supposed to have that much maltiness coming from Vienna malt. And so I think that some of that maltiness actually comes from the decoction mash. So for this beer, what I did is I ended up getting 10 pounds of regular German Pilsner malt. I did 2 pounds of Vienna malt and 1 pound of Munich to give it some of that toasty flavor that this beer is supposed to have. And so I think that with that, combined with the actual triple decoction mash, I'm going to get the actual flavor that I'm looking for. So that's kind of the thought behind the recipe. And so I don't know if 2 pounds is too little, or it may actually be too much, if I do the triple decoction mash the right way, which is what I'm going to be doing today. So anyways, that's it for our recipe, grains, hops, and the yeast. I'm reusing the yeast from the previous batch. So I've got a couple of these little jars. And so that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So I started by adding my grains to my mash tun, and I did my salt additions. For salt additions, I ended up using about 3/4 of a teaspoon of calcium chloride, and this is to enhance some of the maltiness in the beer. And then I ended up adding about just under half a teaspoon of gypsum salt. And I usually add the salt before I add any strike water, and kind of mix it in, make sure that it kind of goes throughout the entire mash. Now I started my strike temperature at about 114, 115 is kind of where I started, and the strike water temperature, the water itself was 124 degrees Fahrenheit, so my mash ended up being right around 114 degrees, and it was basically about a quart, 1.5 quarts of water per pound of grain, which actually ended up being a little bit less than I should have done. And I should have, I don't know what I was thinking when I decided to use this much water. And well, part of it is my equipment was kind of limiting me to using more water, and I should have seen this coming. But anyways, you're going to see what happened later on. So anyways, I struck the water, and I left it sitting for, just about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then I went ahead and started to pull the first decoction. So for the first decoction, basically what I did is I took a strainer and I went ahead and grabbed nothing but grains for the most part. Let the grains drain a little bit, and then added that into my pot where I was gonna boil the grains. Now, the important part here when you are doing decoction mash is the temperatures at which you do your decoction. So this is one of those times where temperature does become a little bit of an important thing, something to pay attention to. So for the first decoction, what I ended up doing was well, first off, I left my mash sitting, cover left that sitting at 114, but the grains that I pulled out, those I actually ended up bringing up in temperature to a temperature anywhere between 156 to 160 degrees will work, but I ended up doing this at a slow rate. So I didn't just crank up the temperature. I did this kind of on a steady pace. And I let that rest for about 10 minutes. Like I said, anywhere between 156 to 160 works. So that is the first decoction. Once I rested that for 10 minutes, I brought that to a boil. And when you got nothing but grains, you can barely see the boil, but that's pretty much what it looks like right there. So once I let that boiling for about 10 minutes, you get a little bit of hot break going on. Then went ahead and just dump that back into the main mash tun. So what that's going to do for the main mash tun is that it's going to bring the entire mash to a protein rest. So you're going to stir that up, make sure that all the grains are going through that same rest. And again, you're going to let that sit just a little bit and start pulling some of the grains back. The first decoction, I pulled about 30% of the mash. For the second, it's closer to about 40%. So total, I think I had about 5 gallons, in volume-wise, grains and water. So 40%, I was basically pulled out about 2 gallons of just about equal amount of grains and water. Now, same thing for this second decoction. I went ahead and brought the temperature up slowly to a temperature of about 160 degrees. Like I said, anywhere between 156 to 160 degrees works. So you just got to be a little bit higher up, and then you let that rest for about 10 minutes at that temperature, 10 to 15 minutes, and then you start to bring it to a boil. And again, you're going to barely see some of the you're going to start seeing a little bit of hot break going on, and you're going to boil that for about 10 minutes, and then you're going to add all that mash, all those grains back into the main mash tun. Now here's where the important part comes in. You want to make sure that when you add this to the main mash tun, you want to be under 151 degrees. So 145 to 151 degrees will work, and that's where you're going to let your mash sitting for about 15 to 20 minutes. Now, at this point, my mash was a little thick, and I wanted to do a triple decoction. Now, the triple decoction usually is used only to bring the mash into a mash out temperature. But at this point, I didn't really have much wort, and that's usually what you pull on a third decoction, just nothing but wort. So since I didn't have much wort to pull out by the time I was done with my second decoction, what I ended up doing instead was I got boiling water that I had ready for my strike water, and I went ahead and added that water instead to bring the entire mash into to mash out temperature. And then I let that sitting for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, let just enough to let the grain bed set. And at that point, I started to recirculate, and I started to transfer all the wort into my brew kettle. Now for this beer, I ended up doing a batch sparge. So I collected my first just under 3 gallons worth of wort at first, and then I went ahead and added more water to the mash tun to collect the rest of the wort. So basically add hot water, keeping it at mash out temperature. Stir that up a bit, and again, I let that sit for about 5-10 minutes, just enough for the grain bed to settle, so I can recirculate and get clear wort out. That's basically the goal here. And so once I did that, I transferred everything. Collected just over 6.5 gallons. I was closer to about 6.6 gallons worth of wort. Brought that to a boil, so you can see the hot break there starting to form. And this beer actually ended up doing just a 60-minute boil to keep the wort from getting too dark. So as soon as I brought it to a boil, I went ahead and started to add my hops. And so I used 2 ounces. Again, these are the fresh hops, boiled for 60 minutes. And after that, everything went basically as normal. Cooled down the wort, and I brought it to yeast pitching temperature, aerated my wort while I transferred to my carboy. And then I went ahead and pitched my yeast. Again, this is the reused yeast. I pitched basically about 2 jars worth of yeast, and I'm starting to ferment this beer at about 46 degrees, but I'm going to be letting the temperature raise slowly to about 55 degrees over the next few days. So that's it for now. I'll be doing a beer review on this soon, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. We'll see you in the next one.